Hi, good day ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Rexel Office Products. My name is Owen Boertes. I'm the National Sales Manager. Rexel Office Products are the proud distributors of Echo brands, namely Rexel, GBC, Lights, Nobo and Kensington. Today we're going to take the opportunity to talk to you about POPI and introduce you to some new shredders. I am not a fundi on POPI. We have invited Dr. Peter Tobin here today to let you know a bit about POPI and what it means for you at home and in your businesses, and the importance of shredding personal documents. Over to you, Peter.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you. I think this is really good timing. We're just a few weeks on from when the POPI Act not only came into force with full effect, but also the information regulator, South Africa, has for the first time the opportunity to exercise its powers of enforcement. Now, many of you have, over the last several years since the POPI Act went on the statute book at the back end of 2013, been working towards compliance with the POPI Act, probably undertaken a project to make sure that your organization is doing all the right things. But I'm not here to talk about the long-term history of the POPI Act. I'm here to talk about where we are today. And right now, many organizations are waking up to the fact that it's more about their supply chain, keeping their customers happy, working with their suppliers, and ensuring that their staff understand what needs to be done to comply with the POPI Act, that's occupying their minds much more than worrying about the regulators going to come knocking on the front door. The truth is that the regulator is under a huge amount of pressure. The regulator team remains relatively small, and as the regulator herself has mentioned a number of times, that team is relatively budget constrained. In fact, they're facing the same sort of business challenges we all do. So I'd like to focus the attention on what you can do to satisfy the people you're working with on a day-to-day basis. First of all, as far as your customers are concerned, they need to know that you're a secure partner. The Protection of Personal Information Act is named like that because a lot of what we're going to talk about over the next few minutes is about security. And a key aspect of security is, of course, physical security, even though that's overwhelmed, if you like, it's pushed to one side by all the fancy stuff we hear about cyber security. But the truth is that in many cases, it's how we secure the work that we do and how we dispose of the paper that we use that represents a continuing threat in the marketplace. As you probably know, condition number 7, security safeguards, says that organizations need to conduct a range of risk assessments for all reasonably foreseeable risks, whether those be internal in the organization or external. One of the myths about the POPI Act is that you're likely to get hit by some bad actor, nation state, heaven forbid I should mention North Korea, China, Russia, or anywhere else in the world. But the truth is that the weak point for most organizations is their own staff. Now, we can address that in part by completing some awareness training, but the truth is we actually need to get into some new habits. We need to adopt and adapt to the new way of working. And when I walk around, as I often do with clients, and tour the workspace that people have, as and when they're at the office with the work from home environment we've had, who knows what's been going on in some of those places over the last, year, 18 months. But when we look at the working environment, we've got to make sure that on a day-to-day basis we're secure. It's all very well saying, well, I know how to lock my laptop. I press the Windows button, L, and there we are. I've locked my screen and everybody's happy. It's not just about that. It's about all the working papers we have around us. It's about the convenience printing we're doing at the local printer so we can just check some things we have on the screen. Now, all of that, the working papers, the casual printing, tends to generate short-term risk to the business. What do I mean by short-term risk? Well, actually, you can get rid of that risk pretty quickly by going down the convenience shredding route. What do I mean by convenience shredding? The sort of thing that you're going to turn your hand to and say, hey, I've got to get rid of that because if it goes in the waste bin, that's not secure, runs a risk for the business. So let me get my stuff together and dispose of that on a quick, easy, convenient basis. So shredding can help you to manage security in your organization and address one of those requirements, spot a risk, and put a measure in place to identify how to address the risk. Now, there's another concern we have that the POPI Act says that you must, in the longer term, not day to day, but in the longer term, identify what is the legal retention requirement for records. To understand that, I always recommend that people look at a guide to retention of records published by the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. It's freely downloadable from their website. It tells you all about how long you need to keep records. Now, we know that many records today are digital, but I'm frankly, and I think like you, fully aware that many records continue to be held on paper. So when the time comes, we're going to need to have a look at how do we dispose and adequately dispose of paper. I think we're well aware that there are some environmental issues with paper. We surely can't go around burning all our excess paper. That's not good for the environment. Standing there and tearing paper up, however many small pieces we try and destroy it into, is also ineffective, both in terms of destroying the information and in terms of the use of our time. So shredding has to be the number one solution to effective disposal of paper in a format that cannot be reconstituted. The POPI Act says that it's no good taking security measures if those measures are ineffective. So I think we've moved on from the time when many of us, some several years ago, perhaps even as recently as when the POPI Act appeared back in 2014, would have been quite happy to have a little ribbon shredder and feel comfortable that we took a piece of A4 and it turned out into 32 pieces, and we'd say, well, we've done the effective job. That's absolutely no longer the case. In fact, with some clients, I've run the exercise of putting the 32 pieces into a plastic bag and setting the timer. You'd be alarmed to find how quickly people can reassemble a single piece of paper. You might argue, we've always got lots of paper with shredding. Okay, so it takes a bit longer. But the bottom line is that international standards now say that shredding just on the ribbon basis is no good. You've got to have a minimum of a crosscut. Now, of course, you can go over the top and say, well, we'll shred this paper so fine that there'll be virtually nothing left, and then you can't recycle the paper. So there has to be a balance between the security needs of your organization, making sure you get the balance right in terms of letting your customers know what you're doing to protect their information, working with suppliers such as Rexel and their partners in the market to make sure that your investments in shredding technology meet the two threats that I've outlined. The short-term threat of the convenient shredding, the day-to-day work, the sort of device that you'll have available for people in the office, and quite frankly, some of us need to think about the risk that we have of our staff continuing to work from home in the longer term, and look at those small convenient shredders which you can have in the home environment, as well as looking at what we do in the office. So going from that convenient short term, let's get rid of the things that, should they end up in the waste bin or should they be left lying around somewhere, risk to security of information in the business, and then take the bigger picture. Look at something that's fully automatic, is productive in terms of people's use of time, carries the sort of volumes that are going to be involved in shredding records that have reached the end of that retention period, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. We're going to get to the point where we're going to say, now we've got some significant shredding to do. I've heard people say, well, wouldn't it be better just to, get a company come in and take the documents away? But that represents a risk in itself. You have to be able to evaluate the type of partner you're working with, know what they're doing. That creates additional cost. So many organizations have said, if I need to comply with the POPI Act, particularly in the area of managing information, managing records, and I look to disposal, then something I have on site, even if it looks like it might be a bigger capital investment up front, which it's probably going to be reasonable in terms of the risk you're running, that's a really effective way to do things. So I've spoken about a couple of things about the POPI Act. Not only is it here, not only is the regulator here, but we need to think about the stakeholders we're working with, and we need to think about one of the risks of trying to comply with the POPI Act. That's managing paper and paper disposal. I hope you've learned something from the few minutes we spent together, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the time that you spend with the Rexel team and with the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.